Welcome to the Forgiven Nutritionist podcast. On today's episode, I'm honored to speak to Atul Kaushal, who courageously shares his personal journey through mental health challenges and the steps he's taken to heal his brain and regain his health. From navigating difficult times to discovering effective tools and practices, join me today as we dive into the lessons he's learned. Here's a clip from today's episode.
I wish someone would map it out because I feel like I walked into life without a owner's manual. I feel like I walked into life and all this stuff was happening. And, I thought it was because my parents were from India and they didn't get the book when we came over here. They didn't get the book. And I was like, that's why I was so different from all the other kids, is because my parents didn't get the book. But I was like, I never had a clue what was going on in social situations. I was like, oh, why are they laughing? And then I would go over there and I would start laughing. And then something else was funny over here. I was always one step behind, right? And so I wish someone would have just like stopped me and said, hey, this is the stuff that's going on. This is the stuff you're feeling and you should go this way. Like you should aim that way, right?
Hey everyone, just a quick break to show some gratitude to our sponsors and give you some special deals. BrainMD nutraceuticals are high-quality supplements specifically designed to support and enhance brain health. Developed by Dr. Daniel Amen and his team of experts, these supplements use carefully selected ingredients backed by scientific research to promote cognitive function, mood stability, and overall mental wellness. BrainMD's commitment to purity and efficacy assures that their supplements provide targeted nutrition for the optimal brain performance and long-term brain health. Be sure to click my link in the show notes.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, AK.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
I'm a little familiar with you because we recently met. So why don't you tell my listeners a little bit about yourself and maybe what you did before and what you're doing now?
Thanks, Wendy. So my name is Atul Kaushal. I'm a physician. I found out early in my career that, at least I felt that we didn't really have a healthcare system because we didn't care for people's health. We had a sick care system because we really cared when people were sick. And I couldn't really practice medicine the way that I thought it should be practiced. So I left. No one seemed to want to change it from the inside. So I left, and I realized I was an entrepreneur at heart. And so I tried to get into startup. I had some good ideas. I didn't know anything about business. So learned my lesson, went back to school, got my MBA. Fortunately, Kellogg, which is in our backyard here, let me in, I was so grateful. And then I came out. I spent a lot of time consulting in healthcare, and now I am out on my own. I realized I'm also not a great subordinate, but I'm passionate about healthcare. I'm passionate about literally that. I'm passionate about caring for people's health, not just the healthcare industry, but I'm passionate about caring for people's health. A big part of that is mental health, which is one of the reasons I think that you and I hit it off so well. I think when you talk about healthcare, especially when you look at hospital systems or consulting companies or anything like that, mental health is somewhere in a corner over here, there. So when I finished my MBA, I spent 10 years consulting in healthcare for Deloitte Consulting. I realized I wasn't a great subordinate, so I learned as much as I could, and then I jumped out, and here I am in the world, trying to make a difference from the outside in.
I don't think that enough people really realize that you kind of hit the nail on the head. And I know a lot of people say this too, but I don't think enough people realize that, healthcare is not about actual healthcare. It's definitely more about sick care. I think today, especially with the internet and more providers becoming aware of things like that, I think it's now becoming more aware to people in general, so they can then start to take their own health into their own hands. And I think they don't realize that they literally can take their health in their own hands as well. And so that, to me, when I found that out for myself, was very freeing. And I'm like you, where I want people to realize that and if they're not happy with their current doctor, they can fire them and find a different one who's going to listen. And eventually you're going to find the right person who's going to listen, or that healthcare provider that is actually going to care about your health and caring for you.
When I was coming around, they used to call that stuff alternative medicine, right?
Yeah.
Now it's called wellness, with red light therapy and cryotherapy and meditation. Oh God forbid you were trying to meditate in the early 2000s, when I told somebody that I was going to California for yoga, because I couldn't find any here. This is in the early 2000s. The response was, "Oh, you can get yogurt in Chicago." Like it was hilarious when we were trying to do. One of my first startups was how not to go to the hospital. When I left my clinical practice, one of my first startups was how not to go to the hospital, and that was myself as a clinician, as a physician, a nutritionist, a mental health expert, and a yoga trainer for meditation and relaxation. And the idea was see your doctor, mental health, eat well, meditate, and then you probably won't get sick, and exercise, and you probably won't get sick. So
yeah. And now it's, just about everywhere, no matter
every corner, and every kind. Hot yoga, cold yoga, this yoga, Pilates yoga,
goat yoga. My
goat
sisters,
yoga.
Yep, my sisters have done that quite a few times here. So, I know recently you and I had met at the Amen Clinics, and you kind of shared a little bit of your story. And I am definitely all about mental health. And I know Dr. Daniel Amen says that if you heal your brain, that your mind will follow. And I don't know that people really kind of grasp a hold of that. And I know that until my brain healed, I didn't really grasp a hold of really what that meant either. And so I brought you on because I really wanted, you had kind of a story of hope. And this year I'm going to kind of take a little bit of a shift. I'm still going to have providers on, but I really want people to understand that they really can take control of their own health. And there are things that they can do to really impact their overall health, but especially their brain health and their mental health, which then is going to transpire not just in themselves, but it's going to transpire in their families, which is going to impact their families and relationships with their kids and their spouses and their mothers and their fathers, no matter what age you are. So why don't you share a little bit about your story and what brought you here?
So first of all, I love that saying from Dr. Amen that if you can heal your brain, you could heal your mind. And at first it's hard to understand, but then the idea, I think, my interpretation of that is that if I'm feeling something, if I'm feeling bad, or I'm feeling anxious or depressed or angry, or if I'm obsessing over something, just like if my stomach hurts, there could be something wrong in my stomach, probably, right? If I have chest pain, someone's going to do an EKG and look at my heart, right? So if I exhibit symptoms from my brain, if my mind is not firing correctly, someone's got to look at the organ that's in there, which is the brain. And so I think that's what Dr. Amen is saying, is that all too often we feel off center, we feel depressed, anxious. In mental health, there's the whole myriad of different things that people go through, and quite often we go somewhere and we talk to someone, and they either there's counseling, or there's counseling plus medication of some kind, but very rarely, do people actually look and see what's going on in the brain. And so I think this is where Dr. Amen really, and the Amen Clinic really excel, are that they focus on looking at healing the brain in order to heal the mind. So for me, the way that this really kind of reflects into my experience is that I had a little bit of a rough childhood. We were immigrants in the early 70s, and it was rough, being kind of the only off-color family in the neighborhood. So I grew up a little rough that way, and that I carried some insecurities and some other things from that period along with me into adolescence. They multiplied as I got older, and then I carried those into adulthood, and these feelings and resentments and insecurities and then the internal compensations that I made to cover the insecurities and just to get through life as a young man, right? With a desire to succeed and a high, relatively high intelligence, and a high expectation from the people around me. So it was kind of a perfect storm for high pressure, high capability, and a lot of emotional pain, all kind of bottled up into one package, moving through life at light speed. In college, I started having some maladaptive behaviors to compensate for the increasing levels of stress and emotional suppression I was having to exert in order to keep moving forward. And so that was the first time that I actually sought help from a mental health counselor, and it was an extreme relief to just to know that someone was understood, and I had someone that I could relate to, because the hardest thing about mental health is, for me, I can only speak for myself, but the hardest thing about mental health for me is the constant feeling that no one's going to understand what I'm feeling. Mm-hmm. And that's always a challenge, because especially for people like myself who are either head of household or head of company, or for some reason expected to perform and carry the weight and bear the crosses, right? And so sometimes people like us can't afford or don't have an audience or an outlet to discuss feelings of inadequacy or anxiety or depression or any of the other things that we may feel. So it was a huge relief to the point where college was successful, and I went on to medical school, which was successful. And then I came back. I realized, as we discussed before, I realized that we didn't have a healthcare system after all that I had gone through, and it really wasn't what I thought it was cracked up to be. So when I left, again, that was another huge emotional challenge for me, having put all that time and effort into this one career path, and then realizing towards the end that that's really not what I had gotten into 10 years earlier. In those 10 years, things had changed so much that by the time I got out, it was a different world. So here, finally is when I ran into the Amen Clinic. We initially met as business partners, because my clinics we have a complementary service to what the Amen Clinic does, and so we met as business partners. And I was so intrigued by their approach to mental health, and again, just having the experiences that I've had, I willingly submitted to becoming a patient, and when so I found the process. I was there as a patient, but I was also there evaluating the business as a business partner, and I found everything to be like super professional and clinically sound. And I went home and I just reviewed my neurology after I got home, just to make sure that I was like, yeah, everything was right on. They took a couple of different SPECT scans, which are different images of my brain under different circumstances, like stressed and relaxed. And then they gave me some tests on the computer for memory and my cognitive abilities. And then they had another clinician take almost a 2-hour clinical history from, like, he said, as far back as I can remember, or if I have stories even from being a baby, if someone said you were dropped on your head or something. And then my doctor, Dr. Easton, he looked at the scans and then looked at all the computer tests, and then looked at the history and kind of put everything together. And then, and then we had a nice chat, and his explanation to me was what I think I would say it's transformative. I'm not sure if, and what he prescribed was was a treatment regimen. So there was nutrition, lifestyle, including exercise and meditation, and then in addition to food nutrition, there were also supplementation instead of pharmaceutical. And so when I put everything into place, and I went home with finally I went home with it's like when you start a new diet, you're like, this is the one, and you're hoping that it won't let you down. You're hoping it won't let you down. And so 2 weeks later, and I was like noticeably feeling different. And I called him. I said, Dr. Easton, if it was this before, it's this now. It's the range is less. And I'm finding that I'm not as delighted, and I'm not pumping my fist in the air when I hear a song that I love. At the same time, I'm not getting angry when someone cuts me off in the road. So it's blunting my emotional response, whatever, and without pharmaceuticals. That because it's at those peaks when I get in trouble. When I'm way too excited or way too depressed is when I start maladaptive compensation, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, his treatment kind of took those rough edges off the top and the bottom of my emotional spectrum, and I'm calm, and I'm able to able to I'd say go over speed bumps without spilling my coffee. Let's put it that way, mm-hmm. right? And it hasn't been. So we lost Dad in January, and I was blind this time last year. I was blind in one eye, so several eye surgeries, and so it's been a rough, and then it's been a rough 18 months, but and that train that was flying down the track was really starting to shake. And then I met Amen Clinics and Dr. Easton, and and we're still flying down the track, but it's a much smoother ride. It's a much smoother ride, and therein is the hope, Wendy. Therein is the hope, because when when I was suffering with all of the different things I was suffering with, I don't have to name it because it doesn't matter what name it is. We're all in the same boat somehow. It seemed as though that there was no medicine that was going to work properly without giving me some side effect. And if I cut the medicine down, I was white knuckling it somehow. And support groups only supported so much, and I couldn't hire a babysitter 24/7, right? So I was trying to balance all of this self-care while having a family and having 2 jobs and, trying to move forward in my life. And that was terrifying. And I don't want to say hopeless, but it was exhausting. It was terrifying. It was, I was looking down the track for the end of I was looking for the light at the end of the tunnel, right? I was trying to see what can I do, to stop, or, maybe for some people, the train just keeps shaking until it falls apart. I mean, I don't know. Right. I mean, so the hope is like, oh my God, somebody knows enough to look at my brain like they would look at my heart or look at my stomach or whatever. And from there they could say, hey, look, this, they can point to the stuff that's not working right. And then they can give me a treatment plan based on that. I mean, that kind of makes sense, right? So, and I don't know if I have to be honest, I don't know if it's just the treatment plan, or in addition to that, if it's also the knowledge. Because the other thing that happens to, I want to say mental health patients, but I'll say for me, the other thing that happened to me was, it's just like, that's just the way I am. But that's just the way it is. Like, that's who I am. That's the way I was born. That's the way I was made. There's 100 ways to say it, right? But we decide at some point that, okay, I'm a downer, or I'm an anxious, or I'm, whatever. And we label ourselves, and then we step into those shoes, and then we just propagate the same self-image. So the knowledge that, okay, I'm not a heart attack, right? I'm not the disease. There's something wrong in that part of me that makes me feel this way, but I'm not a heart attack. I'm not heartburn, right? I'm not depressed. I'm not a depression. I'm a normal person who has heartburn, might have had chest pain, and has this depression, but because of this, not because of who I am. And that separation of me from the disease, from the symptom, that was just like, okay, I'm not. And that like the light of the tunnel went from there to here, like all of a sudden I'm at the end of the tunnel. Right. And so, and that was just, so from about a week after I met Dr. Easton, started the supplements, because I was thinking about all this stuff, and so for about a week after I met him, and then for about I'd say maybe 6 to 8 weeks, I was just having like these revelations of I can't believe I feel normal. I can't believe I'm not overreacting to this. That guy just cut me off. Hey, I'm normal. I'm not yelling, or hey, this is my favorite song. Why am I not? So I was noticing all the new behavioral changes. They were obvious to me. So the hope is there's something that we haven't tried, right? The hope is there's something we haven't tried that actually really works.
And that's usually what happens is when they do hear a more holistic approach and an integrative approach rather than just, like you said, medication and therapy. Although I will say therapy can be fantastic for people, and it can be really helpful. And it sounds like you found it very helpful early on in your, when you were experiencing some things and wasn't sure what's going on, because it can be very refreshing to have that third party to communicate with and just bounce some ideas off of, or sometimes just word vomit, right? It can be very
no,
therapeutic.
absolutely. I really, the analogy for me is, they tell us, the dentist tells us, brush your teeth and floss twice a day. Your doctor will tell you exercise if you can 30 minutes a day. Talking to a therapist is like the same for your mind. It's cleansing out all of the stuff that the garbage that we think of and we store in there. It's getting a good objective view and clearing out all the the imposter syndromes and all the little stuff that we tell ourselves. My wife and I both together, we see a therapist weekly, Saturday morning. We're not fighting. Like we're not in couples therapy because we have a reason to be in couples therapy. We see a therapist together every Saturday, like we brush our teeth twice a day, just to keep things clean, to keep things in perspective, right? And so we're I say we're happy going just past 10 years now.
Well, and a lot of people, hopefully that is a good little tidbit for people to think about too, is I don't think people think about therapy as, like you said, brushing your teeth or like an oil change on your car. You continually do that, and maybe for some people it wouldn't be weekly, maybe it'd just be once a month, but it can be the perfect thing to keep, if your brain was a car, to keep your brain running optimally, especially when you get the right therapy and the right therapist, and that it can be very beneficial. Yes.
But I totally agree that some kind of a regular oil change or tune-up is a great idea. It's a great idea.
Yeah. And when you had your SPECT scan, was there anything on the SPECT scan that you thought, oh, I never thought about that? Or were you like, yes, absolutely, 100%. Now that kind of explains things or XYZ.
I had specific basal ganglia that were hyperactive. They were lit up when they should have been quiet. And those basal ganglia are responsible for like fight or flight and fear and like deep-seated anxiety. They lead to maladaptive behaviors, addictions, fighting, just the kind of very deep down unsettling stuff. The other thing the scan showed was a lot of traumatic brain injury. And the traumatic brain injury is when you get hit in the head, or when you fall down and your head hits the ground or head hits something else, and your brain kind of sloshes up around the inside of your skull. And so the part of the brain that's damaged is the outer cortex, right? Is the part that's damaged the most. And that's the part that makes us human. I mean, that's the part that, that's where executive function and kindness and memory and, happiness and like all that stuff is in, that's all frontal cortex stuff. And so when you have all that brain damage, that's, for example, why, the older NFL players, you've seen them with, like major depression and suicides and stuff like that after enough head trauma, that cortical brain damage, can lead to major depression and whatever comes after that. So that was also like very like, oh, I feel this way because of that. And it was like, oh, well, now I understand. It's not, again, it was disconnecting or disidentifying me from the disease.
Right.
It's yeah, right. It's not I am depressed. It's because of this I feel depressed, and that's a big difference. It's a big difference for someone who struggles with various different pushes and pulls. Disidentifying, saying it's not who I am, it's something I feel, and now I know why, or at least part of it. I mean, so again, let me just go back and say it's not a replacement for therapy. I think it's this is the this is like the foundation for therapy. Like, now we know what the problem is. Let's build therapy around this, right?
Right.
Rather than just kind of sitting and shooting in the dark. So I never. I wish someone would have just like stopped me and said, "Hey, this is the stuff that's going on. This is the stuff you're feeling, and you should go this way. Like, you should aim that way." Right. And that would just be so like to give a kid a roadmap. Right. And that roadmap changes. So once probably, 4th and 5th grade, once 8th grade, 9th grade, and then once, after college, or once maybe in college. But that like deliberate sit down, let's talk about life, just brass tacks. These are the things that are you getting your driver's license. This is what an accident looks like, right? Like, really just, lay things out. And no one did. I had no idea. You know how many accidents I had? I had my first accident the day after I got my driver's license.
Oh my goodness. That's my daughter had one too. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I had nobody told me. I mean, who pays attention in driver's ed,
Right.
Because it's not cool to pay attention to driver's ed. I needed somebody to sit me down. So I was thinking if someone took me and vamoosed me to like a retreat for like 2 days with no phone, no nothing, let me empty my mind of all the social connections and then say, okay, take a deep breath. Now let's talk. This is what's going on in your life. Blah, blah, blah. And then spell things out and let me soak it up and then return me to the real world, right? I would need like 3 of those. And that would be so helpful.
Well, luckily now, AK, they actually do have, I look for people in our system all the time when I work during the day, there's some for social skills, and which I desperately would have needed to. But because I too felt one step behind, like you said, I had no clue as to what everybody else was talking about. And I was like,
right,
oh
right.
gosh, I just want to be part of it, but I had no idea how to do it. And so, yeah, I find coaching and they go as young as 5, I think, or something like that, up to like 34. And I'm like, yes, those are like the prime years. You need somebody through most of that to tell you, like you said, it's not necessarily therapy, but yeah, just someone to walk with you and kind of tell you what's going on and
right, yeah,
how to navigate some things. Yeah.
Yeah, my mother said, so that we have a word in Hindi. It's bhola, and bhola means like it's like happy-go-lucky, innocent, gullible. It's like, in a good way, it's like a blend of happy, gullible, happy-go-lucky kind of guy. But then she said, which as a teenager is like being a sheep among wolves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, to be bhola in as a teenager, you're just, they're going to eat you alive, right?
Yeah.
And so but that was me. Like, I was, I believed everything anyone told me. I could never understand when someone was telling me the truth versus lying. I couldn't differentiate. I didn't have that social skill. I realized, so when I was growing up also, the interesting thing was that everyone was focused on IQ, and I was off the chart, and so I flexed that muscle every chance I could get, and so AP math, AP chemistry, AP physics, SAT 16, 15, 60, 34 ACT. But nobody talked about EQ. Nobody talked about EQ or social EQ, right? And that's really what I needed to develop. I mean, I didn't need to exercise my IQ anymore. I really needed in high school and college what I needed for life, right? I had IQ enough. What I needed out of the system to teach me for my life was I needed an EQ education, not an IQ education.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, emotions are a tough thing when you're growing up to deal with. So what about faith? Has faith kind of helped you at all in your journey to your brain health?
I believe that we're part of something bigger. The faith in something bigger, what it does is it makes the problem at hand feel so small. So being human is being in the moment, right? And faith is I am bigger than this moment. I am bigger than this moment. This is just a blip for me.
Right.
My life is bigger than this moment. So it's kind of cool because mindfulness is staying here, but then also to realize that this is just, while I am here, this is just one fraction of a month, of a year, of a decade of my life, and then faith just blows that out to of my cup in the ocean, like compared to the rest of the ocean, right? This is just my cup.
Right.
And this problem is a drop in that cup, which is a cup of the ocean. So it's just really, it just brings things into perspective, and the anxiety just kind of washes away at that point, because it's like, I can, I have what I need to do this. And why am I, it's going to be hard. It might not be pleasant, but we'll do this. We'll get through.
What are some of your favorite or things that you still do now for your brain health? It can be like, is there a supplement that you definitely love taking, or is there like an exercise that you like to do? Is it meditation, or all of those things that you still, like I said, that you were recommended that you find really work well for you that you're still doing?
Absolutely. So I think the perfect combination for me has been a combination of nutrition, which means eating properly, and supplementation, coupled with 15 to 20 minutes of meditation a day. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'll try to squeeze it in twice a day. And then 30 minutes of exercise a few times a week. I'm trying to get to every day. Right now I'm at 3-4 times a week, but I think that combination is it makes me feel good for a couple of reasons. One is just medically, your blood is pumping and you feel better, and but also emotionally, I mean, that you're doing something good for yourself. It's like going to get a pedicure. That you're caring for yourself, and you're taking time to care for yourself, and that self-love is really, again, that's an emotional warm blanket, that self-love. So yeah, absolutely. Little breaks during the day, a little meditation, a little exercise, and then watching, making sure I eat right, and then supplementation. That's really kind of, that's the way I would start for anybody.
Yeah, and those can be, although they're simple things, they can be very hard, because if you had any bad habits or things that you liked to do, or maybe you didn't exercise, and it's hard to start doing things,
It is. I mean, so like if most people don't have gyms in their houses, so that means you got to find a gym, you got to sign up, you got to, get used to seeing the person there at the front desk and, the locker room and working out and coming home. And when do you do that if you have kids? Like, so it's you have to. So what I had to do was I had to prioritize. I kind of really had to say, like, do I prioritize, if I prioritize my life and my relationships in order to preserve those, I have to make time. Right. And so, so some nights, I kind of have to work late, but they're more than it used to be where I'll just shut everything down at 5 o'clock and say, I'm done. I need to go and, take care of myself now, which I didn't used to do, before all of these more recent changes. I used to just work, 20 hours a day, 300 days, a year. I've started just shutting it down and taking more time for myself. And, and I honestly, like, I never thought I would, be this free from all of the crazy things that used to haunt me. It's nothing short of amazing.
Well, and you said it best earlier too, because I think a lot of people, and I know I've said something similar, where people sink into their diagnosis, and I was 100% guilty of that. Mm-hmm. I had depression and anxiety. So, that's how I lived. Like, I was labeled. Like, you may as well have stamped it across my forehead, And each year, and especially once I got older and I moved back home to Wisconsin here, the labels just kept adding, more and more labels kept adding on. And, rheumatoid arthritis. And, it's like, oh, I have rheumatoid arthritis, and it's like, no, you don't have to be stuck.
It's been really enlightening to go through and kind of re-experience all of the things that I normally did, and notice, noticeably feeling different in those same circumstances and being aware of the difference. It's really, it's almost like a pleasant surprise. Sometimes, like, oh, I guess I'm not going to react that way this time, and it's neat. Now it's those are kind of, I've now experienced most of the things, right? I've had people cut me off, and, I've gone through the, dial 1 for this and 2 for this and 3 for this and 4 for this, and, so I've had all the frustrating experiences, and I've heard all my favorite songs, and, we had dad's birthday was the first birthday after he passed. So I've had all the ups and downs now. So the novelty's wearing off. But you know what? I choose calm to chaos any day,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and when you were explaining that earlier in the conversation, all I could think of was a roller coaster. And I know my husband's heard me say this too, where, instead of being on, the big roller coasters like you see at Great America or Cedar Point in Ohio, you're on the kiddie roller coaster. So it's much more manageable and tolerable. There's still some ups and downs, but.
So I used to get stuck on the demon, on the loop.
Oh,
the upside down loop. I used to get stuck upside down. That would be my life. I would get stuck there.
Well, now that we've reached the end, let me ask you one final question. I always ask my guests for their don't miss this moment. So what would your don't miss this moment be?
So children's mental health is just super, super important, I think. And that would be because then if you can catch, this is really that example of nipping it in the bud, because you catch it or you prevent it at an early age, and then it doesn't blossom into some big terrible monster down the road.
And that's perfect, because as you know, like we were just talking about too, we can compensate for some of the things that we don't understand, and then that kind of drills habits into our own heads and lives, and which can, like you said, manifest worse. It's that ripple effect, right? You throw one little pebble in the water and it just keeps going, spreading.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on tonight. I really appreciate it. And hopefully people find some little snippets of wisdom from your thoughts and sharing your story. And
if one has any Q&A, I'm sure they can get it through you to me. I'm more than happy to respond to Q&A if that's part of your show. That's wonderful too.
Sure. Well, then why don't you definitely tell my listeners where they can find you or follow you?
Sure. So I am we're healthcraftadvisors.com, and I am A Kaushal, so AKAUSHAL at healthcraftadvisors.com.
Perfect. I will put that in the show notes as well, so people, if they're driving or something and listening, they can check it out later.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Wendy. This has been awesome.
Well, thank you so much.
This episode is sponsored by Pendulum's GLP-1 product, a unique solution designed to support healthy blood sugar levels and metabolic wellness. GLP-1 is a critical hormone for regulating blood sugar, and Pendulum's advanced formula works with your body to naturally support GLP-1 production. If you're looking to maintain balanced energy, manage cravings, or support your metabolism, Pendulum's GLP-1 product could be a game changer. Click the link in the show notes and use my code FORGIVEN for 20% off your first month's subscription. Give your body the support it needs with Pendulum's GLP-1. If you want to continue learning and hearing all things nutrition for your mind, body, and soul, click like, subscribe, or favorite me on whatever podcast platform you use, or you can find me at ForgivenNutritionist.com. This podcast was designed to educate, inspire, and empower you to achieve your health and wellness goals. It is not meant to diagnose or treat any illness or medical condition or take the place of any treatments from your current healthcare providers.